Today, we're gonna turn this into this. Do you see all the cool engraved Yetis and water bottles and tumblers out there and think, I really wanna do that? That was me as well. That is one of the things I was really looking for in adding a Thunder laser to my shop, was the ability to add a rotary attachment. So today I'm gonna walk you through all of the different things that you need to do to set up the rotary. Some tips and tricks to make sure that you really get it set so that once you're done with it one time, you feel really confident making those tumblers over and over and over again. You can use this for glass, you can use this for all different things. I suggest starting with a tumbler because removing a powder coat is a pretty easy thing to do correctly and you can be successful really quickly. And that's what we're gonna do today. I really wanna make sure that we talk through what do you really need to actually get started? What are the things that you need to make sure that you're successful right away? And what are those tricks and tips to really get you going in the right direction? If that sounds like something interesting to you, let's go check it out. So let's talk about the things that you actually need to use your rotary. So first and foremost, you need your rotary. I have the Rotoboss Junior, which is great in the Nova 24 because it actually can install on the knife blades so that I never have to set up the alignment again. We'll talk about alignment a little bit later as one of the tricks, but that is really great for someone like me who changes out what they're doing quite a bit. So I don't tend to run a lot of things all at once. Setting up the rotary and aligning it and making sure it's proper and then running a whole bunch of tumblers isn't something that happens in my workflow. But I might get an order for a tumbler, I might want to make something different, I might need to put my honeycomb tray back in. So being able to have that installed on the knife blades and have it aligned perfectly every single time is really awesome for me and something that I really enjoy about this installation. That's a really cool feature about the Rotoboss Junior that fits in the Nova 24. If you have a larger machine, you can get the full Rotoboss, but my machine needs the Rotoboss Junior. You can also look into a chuck rotary, but I have a roller rotary, which is what we're gonna talk about today. The next thing that you need is what you're gonna engrave. I recommend starting with simple tumblers, something like this, or like this, but you can also do things like this. Wine glasses or larger water bottles. There are a few things that you're looking for in the items that you want to engrave, especially if you want to have success right out of the gate and you want to make it easy to understand your settings and how the rotary really works. You're going to be most successful on something like this skinny straight tumbler, which only has a slight taper in the design. So the focus of your laser is going to be very easy to maintain across the entire cup. If you want to do something like a single logo, something like this would be just fine as well, because the area that you're working with will be pretty limited. You won't be trying to make sure that you have a wrap design that meets up at the edges, which is a little more complex. Well, I think these camping mugs are really cool. This also might be something that you want to hold off on because accounting for the handle can be a little bit more challenging in the beginning. What are you looking for in those items that you want to engrave? You're looking for powder coating. So when you're engraving, you're removing that powder coating. So this engraving mark is really just removal of the powder coating. That's what the laser's doing. You wanna make sure that the powder coating is a good, solid powder coat. I recommend going with some known suppliers for this, but you may wanna take a different approach and really test out different kinds of designs on something a little bit less expensive. It really depends on how you're looking at what you're doing. So if you want to have something that you can consistently offer in your business and you want it to be something that's personalized and you wanna offer a few different ideas with that, you may want to go with something like the JDS Polar Camels because you can get that stock almost all the time, you know what you're getting, and your settings will be pretty dialed in once you've done it once. Or you can do something like look on Amazon for different suppliers of powder coated tumblers if you're doing something that's more of a one-off and you want a less expensive alternative. If you're looking at a Polar Camel 20-ounce tumbler, these range from about $9 as a single item down to about $6.50 if you're able to get them in large case quantities. You can definitely find some tumblers on Amazon that are quite a bit cheaper, but if you compare this to a Yeti, this is significantly less expensive than that. So Polar Camel is really in competition with Yeti from a durability standpoint. I've found different blog posts about tests that have been done, and at a minimum it keeps things as cold and as hot as Yeti, but the test would indicate that it does better. This is not sponsored by JDS. I just I've done some research and thought it might be useful for you. Just when I think about how I want to support my business, I like the idea that I can have something that I can really get comfortable and confident with and be really successful with and always be able to get it in stock. If I were to find something that I liked on Amazon and make something that I really wanted to be able to do over and over again, but I couldn't get that stock again, I might find that really frustrating. Also, the batch consistency might be a little more challenging. So you could look at that as an opportunity to really test something and learn something new. If you're working on wrap designs or you want to try some wider placements, some different things like that, that might be a good reason to get some of those less expensive versions and then just sell off those items as a less expensive version. Just you don't necessarily have the same quality control that you know you have with something like JDS. If you do want to engrave Yetis, you can do that as well. Make sure that you check before you start selling them what you are doing in terms of your marketing on those. I am not a lawyer and I am still a little bit confused about exactly how you can do this legally with the Yeti names. The next thing that you need is a flexible measuring tape like this. Something that your mom might have used to measure you for a dress or a suit when you were younger. This will be used when you're measuring the circumference of the item that you're engraving for your setup of your template for your design. The next thing that you'll need is a level. This one was included with my Rotoboss and I love it because it sits really nicely on top of my tumblers. So you'll need something to make sure that your cup is level. That's really important for your focus. The next thing that you'll need is whatever tool that you use to focus your laser head. So you can use your block of acrylic or your focal measure, whatever you use to actually measure that distance and get your focal height correct. I've seen a lot of videos that talk about setting at 7mm, but from my discussions with other people who are familiar with this, I am still focusing at 6mm and getting great results. The next thing that you'll need is a cleaner. So once you've removed that powder coating or you've etched your glass, you'll want to clean that up. I've been using the LA Awesome that you can get from the Dollar Tree and just a magic eraser. But I've also heard good things about Enduramark Blue. You'll also need either masking tape or painter's tape, take a pick. You'll use this to outline your design or to check your steps per rotation to make sure that your design is going to turn out the way that you expect it. There's a couple of different methods for testing this and I'll walk you through a few later in this video. If you plan to engrave glass, you might want to have some dish soap on hand. Dish soap is a natural fire retardant, so it's great to put on glass to make sure that you're not overheating using the laser to etch the glass. So those are all the things that you need. Now we'll go walk through what this setup looks like and how you're going to use all of these things to be successful with that first tumbler. The first thing that you're going to do when you get your Rotary out is you're going to go and look at the user manual and you're going to watch the videos on how to set it up properly. I recommend doing this because there are some details about how to, especially to install on the knife blades, that Jason does a really great job of explaining in his videos, much better than I would be able to explain it to you. But the goal there is to really make sure that those hangers for the rotary attachment are attached properly to your knife blades so that they don't move, so that once you get your alignment correct, you are good to go. I will show you the trick that I used to get my alignment straight, so how I ran the laser beam across. There's also a video by Robert Kofed who you can see how to change the speed of your laser. So if you're trying to jump it into specific spots, you can really slow it down from the Ruida controller. So I will link that video as well. This is what the Rotoboss looks like installed in my Novo 24 on the knife blades. So you can see here is the clamp for holding the cup, the rollers that the cup will sit on in the back, the adjustment wheel. I've seen some concerns that this is not easy to turn because of how your fingers sit, but you can just as easily roll it with your hand for quick movements up and down. That is the wheel to roll the back. So same thing, that's the motor. One of the things that you need to do when you're setting up your rotary is you need to make sure that it is traveling in a straight line across the x-axis. So the way that I did that is that I used this line here and I traced my laser across that line. So you can see the red light. And I lined it up in that line and I traced it up and down that line to make sure that it stayed straight. You can look down the gantry and make sure that you align with that, but in my setup, I'm not tall enough to see over that to really do that, so I didn't do it that way. Now, once I knew that this was aligned straight, I went ahead and made a dot here so that I can always line up straight with that when I place a cup, and I make sure that I put my laser dot on there, and then the center of the cup aligns with that. I also put one on the rear, but I don't use that one as much. What's the next thing that you need to do once you've ensured that your x-axis is nice and straight? You need to figure out the steps per rotation that your rotary travels every time that it makes a turn. This might get a little bit confusing because it isn't related to the circumference of your cup specifically. The only time that the circumference of your cup really matters in terms of your steps per rotation is when the neck of the cup that's resting on the wheels is different than the circumference that you're engraving. So if you do something like this, where the neck that's actually resting on the wheels is a different size than this, that's when your steps per rotation may change. Once you've determined your steps per rotation, you really don't have to change that very often unless you're doing something, again, where the neck that you are resting on the wheels is a different size than the body of the item that you're engraving. And that's really because what you're measuring is how quickly your motor is turning the wheels and how much it moves between each of those turns. When you make your designs, your design will tell the laser what to engrave in each one of those steps, but those steps really tell the laser how fast everything is moving. One really cool thing about the Thunder laser and the Rotoboss combination is that this doesn't use one of your primary axes in Lightburn, so you don't have to change any settings. You just plug it in, set up your rotary, and go. There are other places where you need to unplug something, plug something else in, so that is a cool feature of the Rotoboss specifically. There's a couple of different easy ways to do this. One involves engraving and one doesn't. I'm going to show you the method with engraving, but we'll also talk about the method that doesn't require any engraving at all, just using the frame function. So to prep my cup for this test, I am going to use masking. I'm just going to use plain masking like I would use to mask wood. And I'm only going to mask the area that I'm going to do this test on because I don't want anything to slip on the wheels. So I want to just make sure that I've covered the area that I need to do this test on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a 1 inch by 1 inch square that I'm going to measure specifically, actually 25.4 millimeters by 25.4 millimeters, that I'm going to measure once I've set my steps per rotation, and I'm going to see if I actually get a 25.4 inch square, 25.4 millimeters square. If I don't, then I need to adjust my steps per rotation until I get that right. And I'll share with you a formula that I found that gets you pretty close in that math, and so you can dial that in a little bit more. The alternative option is you would take this masking and you would lay it out flat and you would measure out a 100 millimeter rectangle. So 100 millimeters across, doesn't really matter how long it is, and then you would trace that with the laser beam using the frame function. And so you can just see, does it actually go that full 100 meters? I like this because I'm still getting used to it, and I like to actually have that engraving on there to make sure the laser's firing and everything's working properly, but either method would work. So let me show you how to do this method. First things first, anytime that we're installing a new cup, I want to make sure that I move my laser head out of the way, just so I don't bump it. Next, I place my cup in those front rollers, and I make sure that it's snug against this bumper right here. Now you can see that the end isn't bumped up against the cup, so I'm going to want to do that. And I'm going to, whoops, went the wrong way. So I'm going to roll this quick. And I'm going to bump it all the way up against my cup. Once it's tight against my cup, I'm actually going to go and move it back slightly until I can see just a little bit through. So one more roll, just so that I know that it's not going to bump up against there. Okay, so now that's set up for me to do this test. I'm going to bring the laser head over to that dot that I set up. So now my laser head is aligned in that center dot, and I'm going to drive the laser straight across until it's on the point I want to start on my cup. So now I'm going to make sure to set my origin. And that's where this will start every time. So now I'm in the center of my cup at the very top, and we'll head over to light burn. So we are quickly going to go into light burn and create a square that is just an inch by an inch. I'm going to actually set this in millimeters, so we're going to set it to 25.4 millimeters with the lock button on, and it will just resize both. So now I have my square, and I will move that square. It doesn't really matter where that square is, the canvas, because that square will just get picked up from this dot, that is this green dot, that is the user orientation. So I am using the orientation from current position, and we've set that green dot to the middle. You see if I switch this here, it'll set it at the top left corner or the top right. I'm thinking of that as top left and top right in terms of orientation to the cup, not orientation to the screen. So I want that to be in the center, thinking of my cup sitting kind of this way, and that laser dot will hit right there. I know that the power that I want to set this at is 400 speed and 12 power. That will give me enough of a marking on that masking tape just to be able to see this. So now that I know that my origin is correct, I've checked my settings, and I don't need the air on as this is just an engrave, I can go ahead and send that to the laser. All right, so now that my cup is placed in properly, I need to level it. So I'll take my little level, and you can see that I need to move it up. And I'm just going to turn using that quick turn until I get that bubble in the middle. All right, so that looks good. And now the next thing that I need to do is I need to set my focus. So to set my focus, I like to use the little square that Thunder provided. And I will move up until I'm close. But now that I'm close, I don't want to risk having my head crash. So I will just loosen this until it touches down, and then I'll tighten it back up. And then I can remove my square. It fits nice and tight, and I'm ready to go. The first thing that I want to do when I get my file in there is I want to use the frame button. And just make sure that I am framed properly on my cup, which I am, and now we'll run it. All right, now that that job is finished, we are going to measure this little square. It's actually perfect. Now, what we're looking for is that steps per rotation got us an exactly 25.4 millimeters square. If it were more, then we would need to adjust it, or if it were less. I'm going to put a formula down in the description that you can use to start adjusting your steps per rotation if you're off. This one came out perfect though, so we don't need to do that. So let me show you. So this is really difficult to see on camera, but it was a perfect square. I'm going to show you another method too. The next method that you can try to get your steps per inch, if you don't want to do any engraving, and if you trust your ability to draw a straight line a little better than I do, is you can draw a straight line and then test that. So in this case, it's 50 millimeters, and we will draw the frame of a 50 millimeter box on our laser and use the frame function to see if it lines up with that. Because we're going to trace the line using the frame function, in this case, we actually want the origin set right at the end of the line rather than in the center. And we will make sure to use the left bottom corner in our design in Lightburn. So now that I have done that, I found my file, and I'm going to use the frame function and watch if the laser makes a nice line across that line. So while I like the idea of using this line and frame function, I find that a little more challenging because I can't use the formula to know exactly how much I need to change if I'm off in my steps per rotation. So I really like using that Engraving, the 1 inch by 1 inch square, and then using the formula to dial it in. Now, granted, because the formula doesn't get me exactly there, I may have to go a couple of different times, and in certain cases, close enough will work, but you will want to play with this, especially when you're doing really fine designs or wrap designs that you need for the edges to mesh together, to make sure that your steps per rotation are as accurate as they can be. I personally like working in millimeters because you can get more accuracy than in your inches. So that's why I would suggest using millimeters as well. The formula also is done in millimeters. So the closer you can get on your millimeters, the better off you're going to be. So once you have your steps per rotation dialed in, you're pretty much ready to go and to really get started with all of the different things that you want to do. That steps per rotation should work for anything that is 1 circumference, roughly. And there are tricks that you can use when you start to get fancy for things that may taper more, but really you should still be able to use that same steps per rotation. Again, if you are going to do something where the neck is different sized, you will need to recalculate those steps per rotation. And that's really the only thing that you'll need to do. And once you've done it for that item, as long as you keep track of that, then you can just use that over and over again. You won't want to change the diameter of your wheels because those don't change. You just want to change the steps per rotation that you're using. So now that we've checked that steps per rotation, let's put it to the test and try something else that is all 1 circumference, another 20-ounce tumbler, and see if we still get that perfect 1 inch, 25.4 millimeter square on some other item. I'll set that up and then I'll show you. All right, so I set this cup up using all those same steps that I did. I lined up my laser beam with that dot and got it straight on here, re-leveled the cup, and then redid the focus. I will say, make sure if you're doing tumblers, as a good habit to move your origin to the top left corner when you're done with something so you don't have a head crash with putting something taller in if you're turning off and on in between what you're doing. Since we already have that square sent, we can just go ahead and find that file. And then we'll hit start. Okay, I know this is difficult to see, but you can see that little engraved square. It looks like it's actually 26 millimeters. So I might dial this in a little bit tighter. If I was doing a wrap design, I might want to make that even tighter, but I don't think this is going to make a difference in the design that we're going to do. There's a couple of things that I'm doing to ensure that this looks how I want it to look. So I know that I want the image to be about 3.25 inches high. And that's just from some tests I've done. So I made the image 3.25 high, and then I rotated it 90 degrees. I also know that I want it to be offset from the top of the cup by about 1/2 inch. So I made a box that was 3.75 inches high, wide in this case, so that I could offset the image from that. And then the origin of my job will start at that center point that I am deciding. And then it will start actually engraving down that 1/2 inch. And the way that I did that is I created this box and then I right aligned the centers of the image and the box. And then I just made the box slightly smaller, slightly larger so that I could see the edge of my image. I won't be outputting this line, but it will determine where this image is placed. So it starts the origin of the job, but it won't output as part of the job. Now, the settings that I'm going to use for this are going to be 600 speed and 35% power. I'm going to allow that to go down to 30% power. I'm going to use a 0.060 fill, 400 lines per inch, and we'll see how that turns out. And I don't need to have the air on because I'm engraving, and that should be good to go. So again, I want this job origin placed in the center because I'm going to center that on my cup, and I have this offset a little bit for where I want it to actually engrave. All right, so you guys are testing this live with me. I haven't done this one yet. I did a couple of water bottles and I really liked this size of image. I feel like this might be a little bit too big on this cup, but you know what? I already dinged this cup up, so let's test it out and see what we think. All right, here goes nothing. All right, so what you're seeing is just the residue of the powder coating that you need to remove. So it looks really scary at first, but then we just spray it with some of our LA Awesome. We'll let it sit there for a second or two. And then we just take our magic eraser, wet it, and wipe it down. And there we go, nice clean engraving. And I even managed to cover where I had my head crash. Now that we've cleaned up our cup, we're done. That's your first tumbler. You can do that probably start to finish in an hour. I took a little bit longer because I struggled a little bit with getting my hangers correct on my knife blades within my rotary. But after that, everything's pretty simple. I do recommend that you start with a straight cup or a not so tapered tumbler just to be successful and not to have issues with your focus. But that's a pretty easy first project. And all of those tips on how to make sure that you get your steps per rotation are really the big thing here in making sure that you're successful. Once you have that steps per rotation down and you know how to calculate it and you know how to look at it in any different version that you run into, you'll be successful with all of your different rotary projects. Let me know in the comments if you think this image is too big, or if you're really a fan of the dark side and you wish that I had used a Sith symbol instead. If you are starting a laser business and you would like some support in a group that is really focused on how do you make a profitable laser business? What are those things that you need to do? What are those tips and tricks to really get you as successful as you want to be as quickly as possible? We have a new Facebook group. It's hosted by myself, Jacqueline Kyle of the Fable Tree, and John Kaipoff, and you can find all the information for that down in the description below. If you're looking for inspiration on starting a successful laser business, you should check out this video with Sarah Heap of Heap Design Co. and learn how she really grew her business in a smart way to something that is super successful today.